Dr. Ranbir Sartain was born in 1953 or 1954. He mentions that he studied under Michael Myers' clinical psychologist, Dr. Samuel Loomis, just before Loomis passed away. This would mean that Dr. Sartain was likely a graduate student at the time, which puts him in his mid to late 20s. We don't know anything about Sartain's childhood, but his accent suggests that he may be from Turkey. His morgue tag says he died in Izmir, Turkey, which is obviously wrong, so I'm guessing Turkey was actually his place of birth. It's never explicitly stated when Dr. Loomis died, but it's assumed that he died of natural causes in this timeline. His actor, Donald Pleasance, died in 1995, so we can assume Sartain took over the job around then. Dr. Sartain would follow a path similar to his teacher, but his obsession with Michael Myers would eventually go too far. If you want to know how Dr. Sartain's obsession with his patient compares but also greatly differs from his mentor, Dr. Samuel Loomis, just how common it is for doctors to become obsessed with their own patients, and what drove Dr. Sartain to attempt murder, stick around to the end of this video. Welcome to Horror History. Not much is known about Ranbir Sartain prior to his work with Dr. Loomis, but he was likely a good student growing up as he got into a well-respected graduate program at the University of Illinois to study psychology. He eventually would go on to study under Dr. Loomis, and after his death, lobbied to take over his work with Michael Myers. This is a little trick that the Halloween writers used for almost all of the new characters in the 40-year timeline. The majority of newcomers work under a more familiar character in some way to make it feel like they're connected to the original story. Frank Hawkins worked under Sheriff Brackett. Karen Nelson was raised by Laurie Strode. One thing about Dr. Sartain's past is very clear. As time went on, his obsession with figuring out Michael Myers grew more extreme, even surpassing that of his mentor. From what we see, he doesn't seem to have much of a personal life outside of his studies. Besides Michael Myers, the only thing that he's shown to take interest in is analyzing his patients' dreams.
You dream? No. Sometimes we've got to remember our dreams. But if we're dreaming, so just before we wake up, we remember those. That's right.
That patient, who is in the confines of a sanitarium, is so bored by Sartain, he's actively reconsidering being crazy. It's possible that Dr. Sartain had an interest in serial killers in general, leading to his fascination with Michael. I say this because it seems like he came from pretty far away to study the shape, as opposed to Loomis, who already lived and worked in Illinois. In a conversation with Officer Hawkins, Sartain says what intrigued him in his studies was the effect of tragedy on the victimizer. I feel like that's something I talk about a lot when covering villains on horror history. Oftentimes, the horror movies and novels themselves focus more on how the victim reacts to the horror. But Sartain, and I guess myself, prefer to analyze the bad guy. Maybe our boy Ranbir should have just become a content creator. His desire to understand Michael isn't so different from what drives most audiences to the genre of true crime. According to BBC's Science Focused, evolutionary psychologists say that we're drawn to these tales because major crime has played a significant part in human society since our hunter-gatherer days. It's in our nature to be highly attuned to criminal misdemeanors, and we instinctively want to discover the who, what, when, and where so we can find out what makes criminals tick and to better protect ourselves and our kin. This is a human instinct that most human beings have to a certain extent. So now you can tell your local anti-horror snowflake up yours. Liking dark things is literally human nature. However, in Dr. Sartain's case, it's much more complicated than just a typical morbid fascination. To understand how his obsession with Michael Myers started to veer off from just primal instinct, I'm gonna look to the Key West in the 1930s, where another doctor had a similar relationship with his patient. In 1930, a physician by the name of Carl Tanzler encountered a patient named Maria Elena Milagro de Hoyos, or as I'll be calling her from now on, Dear Maria. I got your picture! When she came into the hospital that Dr. Tanzler worked at, there was an immediate attraction, but sadly for her, she was there due to tuberculosis, which was often fatal at that time. Tanzler immediately became infatuated with her, despite her technically being married, and paid personal house visits, trying every possible treatment he could think of, showering her with gifts along the way. Despite Tanzler's efforts, she died. However, Tanzler's obsession with Dear Maria would not stop at her death. He paid for her burial in a pricey mausoleum and visited her there almost every night for 2 years. That was until he lost his job, probably for being too much of a simp. He crept into the cemetery one night in 1933, removed her body from the mausoleum, and took her to an old hollowed-out airplane where he used DIY techniques to preserve her, such as arranging wires and plaster to maintain her shape, using mortician's wax to rebuild her face, and adding real human hair to her scalp. An array of flowers, perfumes, and antiseptics were placed to try to hide the smell of her decaying body. After 7 years of maintaining this and doing who knows what else, Maria's sister discovered the life-size effigy, like something out of an Alfred Hitchcock movie. Dr. Tanzler was exhibiting behaviors associated with something called obsessive love. Obsessive love is not officially recognized as a disorder by DSM-5, the current standard guide for diagnosing mental disorders, but it can be used as a sign of other conditions and disorders. Obviously, Dr. Sartain's case doesn't exactly qualify. He was not romantically in love with Michael Myers, but his obsession would follow a similar trajectory, so it's worth bringing up for comparison. Both doctors' obsessions led them down a path to extreme behavior. We could even say the same about Dr. Loomis. Maybe I've just discovered a brand new condition. Let's just call it obsessive doctor disorder, or ODD for short. Dr. Sartain had to lobby to be able to take over Loomis's studies on Michael Myers, which he was eventually granted, but he was not the only one to take a greater interest in Haddonfield's boogeyman. After Michael's first escape in 1978, the state of Illinois became less interested in rehabilitating him and more interested in understanding how he ticks so that massacres could be prevented in the future. Dr. Sartain took great lengths to try to accomplish this, but years of failure only made him more driven to crack the Michael Myers code. He brought in over 50 clinical psychologists to try to see Michael, and each had different opinions about him. During the 40 years of Michael's second stint of captivity, he rarely spoke, which Sartain took as a personal preference rather than a speech disability. At some point, Smiths Grove Sanitarium rebranded to Smiths Grove State Hospital, which may have been a result of Sartain's policies. Every morning, he did individual check-ins with patients, he tried to calm them with old music, and he made sure they got fresh air and sunshine every day by outfitting space on the world's largest checkerboard. Despite this, lack of visitors for Michael limits Sartain's ability to see him react to different people or environments. He seems jealous that Loomis saw Michael in the wild, as Sartain puts it, because he mentions this multiple times.
Dr. Loomis was the only one to see him in the wild. I've worked with Michael for years, but I've never seen him in an uncontrolled environment.
With no conclusions drawn after 40 years, Michael was set to be transferred to a new facility, Glass Hill, and assigned a new doctor, which Dr. Sartain obviously isn't pleased with.
Glass Hill is the pit of hell. For years he's been kept here to be studied. I suppose the state has lost interest in discovering anything further.
I can imagine that at this point he lost hope, because his entire life's work was about to be for nothing. That is, until he was approached by British investigative journalists Aaron Corey and Dana Haynes. They wanted to speak with Michael, which Sartain saw as a potential last-ditch opportunity to see a new side of his patient. So they scheduled a meeting just before the transfer on October 29th, 2018. This is where Loomis and Sartain's respective obsessions with Michael diverged from one another. Loomis's obsession was all about stopping Michael and protecting innocent people from his wrath. He was perfectly willing to kill Michael to do this.
My suggestion is termination.
Whereas Sartain would do whatever it took to keep Michael alive. He seems to be captivated by everything his patient does, and during Aaron and Dana's visit expresses that despite Michael's lack of reaction, he is well aware of their presence and taking in everything that they're doing. Dr. Sartain allows Aaron to provoke Michael using the mask from his 1978 rampage, but gets no response. Later that night, when Michael is being transferred, Sartain exhibits behavior similar to Carl Tanzler's unstoppable obsession with Maria. Tanzler didn't let her death stop him from trying to save her, and Sartain refuses to give up on Michael even after losing authority over him.
Michael Myers is still my patient until he's in somebody else's care. So I'm seeing my duty through till the end.
In the late night of October 30th, Michael overtook the bus to escape into the wild. It's likely that Dr. Sartain played a part in helping Michael get free. As Michael got away, he attacked 2 guards and the bus driver, with Sartain being left alive but stranded on the bus in handcuffs for some reason. The doctor likely saw this as the two of them having some kind of bond or silent agreement. He would help Michael go free, and in return, Michael would let him live. Clearly, after all of his studies, he did not understand Michael Myers. When a man and his son come across the bus wreck, they get out to investigate, and the boy shoots Sartain in the shoulder, despite Sartain literally saying, "Don't shoot!" Sartain is discovered later by Deputy Hawkins. Barely conscious, he's able to utter out the words, "Did he escape?" illustrating his top priority before falling unconscious. He's rushed to the hospital in the early morning of October 31st. The police would like to question him about the incident, but nurses inform them that he lost too much blood, causing him to drift in and out of consciousness. However, a gunshot wound is no match for Sartain's obsession. After a few hours in hospital care, which happens to be just long enough for Michael to begin his rampage through Haddonfield, Sartain catches up with Deputy Hawkins, where he meets Laurie Strode, and for lack of a better term, goes full fangirl.
Laurie Strode.
Laurie Strode, meet Dr. Sartain.
I read everything about you and Michael. Everything.
Dr. Sartain expresses this extreme fascination with Laurie because she's one of the few people alive who has seen Michael killing in the wild, which, as I mentioned earlier, he's very jealous of. The other survivors are either too young or they just didn't see very much of him. Being that Sartain is most familiar with his patient, Hawkins brings him along to help with the search. It's here that he exposes his own obsessive doctor disorder through the excitement evident when talking about Michael.
I want to know what he's feeling. I want to know what pleasure he gets out of killing.
He even warns Hawkins that Michael is considered property of the state and must not be harmed, further solidifying that his motivations for studying Michael are far different than Dr. Loomis's. Loomis is what fans of true crime would refer to as being pro-victim, whereas Dr. Sartain wouldn't feel out of place browsing serial killer merch on Etsy. In the original Halloween, Loomis was armed with a gun, so he believed that he didn't have much to fear when going after Michael. In Sartain's case, he has a different reason to believe that he's not in danger. Often when serial killers go to prison, they get letters from people who are essentially fans that desire to be close to them. According to some experts, these fans have a sexual attraction, while others don't believe that it necessarily has to be. According to forensic psychology professor Katherine Ramsland, PhD, these fans get the delusion that they're special to the person, so that if the person escaped, he or she wouldn't harm the fan. Ramsland attributes this to narcissism. Given the fact that Michael chose not to kill Sartain on the bus, and the fact that he tries to comfort Michael prior to the patient transfer,
Don't worry, Michael. I'll be by your side.
it seems like Sartain probably has the same delusions that serial killer pen pals do. It could also just be a false sense of safety due to spending so much time around him, like the countless stories of zookeepers who let their guard down around dangerous animals. Whatever the reason, it would not be long before Sartain had a wild encounter of his own. After picking up Laurie Strode's granddaughter, Allison Nelson, trembling in fear from her brush with Michael, Sartain tells citizens to lock their doors and go inside, and for some reason throws in that he's a doctor.
I'm a doctor. Lock your doors.
As if that qualifies him to be an expert on home safety. Even though there's never been a moment in the history of Michael Myers where he was deterred by a locked door. It seems as though he's enjoying being in a position of importance. Allison leaves with Hawkins and Sartain, sitting in the back of the police car and keeping an eye out for Michael. When they do find him, Hawkins floors it and slams into Michael. As he does so, Sartain yells in protest. Sartain gets out to protect the unconscious Michael while Hawkins screams at him to get out of the way so he can shoot. The doctor believes that Michael is dead, or at least says that to discourage Hawkins from trying to do any more damage. This is the point where Sartain goes from obsessed to psychopathically obsessed. He has a hidden scalpel blade inside his pen, so he does his best Ezio Auditore on Officer Hawkins, dropping him to the ground. Up until this point, he had expressed several times that he really wanted to know what Michael felt like while killing, so he exclaims,
So, this is what it feels like.
which solidifies the idea that if he ever wanted to solve the mystery of Michael Myers for scientific purposes to better humanity, that is no longer the case. Because it doesn't make sense to become a killer in order to try to stop one. Then again, there are people who spend thousands of dollars on credit cards so they can save a couple bucks on airline miles. I just don't take Sartain to be that much of an idiot. I think he knows Michael won't be free forever, and he's desperate to learn as much as he can about him for purely selfish reasons. It's like I said earlier, he likes to feel important. And it doesn't stop there. Sartain puts on Michael's mask and stares at a terrified Allison through the car window, just to, as he put it himself, see what it feels like. After loading Michael into the back of the locked police car where Allison is now trapped, he drives away over Hawkins' body and tells Allison that he's bringing Michael to Laurie Strode to set up a reunion. His theory is that Michael stays alive to continue hunting Laurie and that Laurie stays alive to continue fighting Michael. He also tells Allison how badly he wants to hear Michael speak. He is convinced that only Laurie Strode could bring this out of him. Off of this information, Allison devises a plan on the spot to try to free herself from the back of the car. She claims that she had heard Michael speak when he killed her friend and offers him a deal. If Sartain lets her out, she'll tell him what Michael said. However, Sartain's excitement over the possibility over what Michael could have said completely distracts him. He guesses at what the supposed spoken word might have been, like an excited parent who just found out their kid spoke his first word from the babysitter.
What was the word? Was it the sister's name? Judith?
But before getting his answer, Michael wakes up and swiftly kicks in Dr. Sartain's seat, then proceeds to drag the injured psychologist out of the car. His final moments are the perfect microcosm for his entire character, because instead of pleading for his life or showing any kind of fear at all, he's completely focused on asking Michael to say something. Right until the end, his actions are dictated by his ODD, his obsession to understand his patient. Ultimately, he does not get into Michael's head, but Michael's foot gets into his. I've got more horror history episodes on other Halloween franchise villains, like the infamous Conal Cochran, and of course the Masked Menace himself. Check the playlist for the complete set. Remember to subscribe to CZ's World for new horrors every week, ring the death bell and select all notifications. I will see you in the next one, assuming we both survive.